Chicago White Sox ended the weekend on a high note, beating the Seattle Mariners on Sunday afternoon. Dylan Cease, Michael Kopech, and Mike Clevinger all saw action over the last few days. Oscar Colas continues to smash the baseball and now has his first big league banner hanging on 35th Street. Are the Los Angeles Dodgers trying to trade for Tim Anderson? And how long will Andrew Vaughn's back keep him out of the lineup?
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Baseball GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an MLB GM and managing your baseball franchise? Then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimatebaseballgm.com or look it up in the app stores. Our listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in the game. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong diehard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTV. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, welcome back to Locked On White Sox. Hope you had a great weekend. 10 days away from opening day. Can you believe it? Appreciate you continuing to pass this podcast along to other White Sox fans in your life as we inch closer to that big 4-game series against Houston. Don't forget to get those questions and comments in for our mailbag episode this weekend, Wednesday, lockedonsox@gmail.com. Our Chicago White Sox have a spring training record of 9-8 with a few ties in there. To kick things off, wanted to talk about some of the happenings around the ballpark and some of the new signage, I guess, on 35th Street. I was walking by Guaranteed Rate Field this past weekend, and they've got all the new banners up on the light posts that line 35th Street near the stadium. There's always, a fresh batch that comes up around this time. There'll be other banners that are going up around the ballpark as well with all the latest graphics. And wouldn't you know it, but Oscar Colas has got his own banner. Is that a telling sign? I don't think they're going to make too many banners for guys that are going to start in AAA Charlotte. So White Sox, maybe they're tipping their hand. However, the spring that he's having, there'd be no shocker. So interesting stuff going around the ballpark, and more of that AstroTurf being laid out in the south end of Lot B. And I tried to get a very close look. They've removed the tent over the old Comiskey Park plate, and it looks like there is like a cement wall, a circular wall protecting that area by old Comiskey Park plate. So again, could be a little moment there for that area once it's all said and done. Again, just a few weeks away from that home opener. Speaking of Oscar Colas, there was something in the Chicago Sun-Times a few days ago. Daryl Van Scoven had the article. Colas has made a fine impression entering Sunday's game, batting 300, 317, 475 with 2 home runs in a team-high 17 Cactus League games. It sure has felt like he's been playing just about in every single game. This is what Colas had to say. We're working on correcting the mistakes, working to improve. First base coach Daryl Boston, who works with the outfielders, said Colas is close to being ready. He's not far, Boston said. We've had guys way worse than that out there. He's definitely going to be ready. Not necessarily a stamp of approval. as an outfielder, but I don't think he's been too bad. Some of his throws in have been a little shaky. That's definitely been something I've seen for him to be working on. Van Scoven wrote, "It's plain to see in Colas's body language that he wants to show he's ready. If he makes an out, he appears this close to slamming his helmet. If he makes a mistake in the field, hands land on the hips, the head might bow. We always want to do our best, not make any mistakes or do anything wrong," Colas said. Sometimes you express frustration in those moments. The game at this level is faster. Pitchers miss their spots by small margins. They might make 2 bad pitches in a game. Hitters don't miss mistakes. Everybody is more focused. That makes the game faster. Grafol said Colas receives corrective instruction as well. I'm glad he reacts like that. Grafol said that means he's creating a little urgency for himself to get it right? But he's never going to get a pat and on the backside from us on a mental mistake. As a matter of fact, he's going to have somebody waiting for him right there, which, of course, I think is a great thing for a young player like that. Constantly be learning, constantly getting better, and hopefully those veterans are there too to support him every step of the way. Entering Sunday's action, the White Sox ranked 22nd out of all 30 teams in offense this spring and 11th overall in pitching. That really comes down to the team ERA. So Sunday's game, Sox beat the Mariners 6-2. Dylan Cease was on the mound. Remember, he had that really rough start against the Royals and then a much better go of things in the start after that. So this is that third start, after he was way out of sorts in that Royals game. And you could have seen every start since he's gotten definitely better. Cease improved as the game went on Sunday. It started off rough, and he actually had a stretch in Sunday's game where he struck out 4 Seattle Mariners in a row. I was able to watch a lot of White Sox baseball this past weekend. You had obviously the Friday game that we'll get to on NBC Sports Chicago against the Cubs. Then Saturday's action with Kopech was on the MLB TV app, as was Sunday. So I saw a lot of this, on the app. Cease, the body language, a little rough, visibly frustrated a few times with his inability to locate his stuff. But Seattle broadcasters talking about how he was reaching 95, 96 miles per hour. All in all, Cease went 4 innings, gave up 3 hits, only 1 earned run, and that was in the first inning, 1 walk and 6 strikeouts. So one of his really good outings here this spring, of course. And again, after that first inning, he really settled in, struck out the side in the third, I believe. After Cease, it was Banks, Lambert, Lopez. He was the one that gave up the other run for the Mariners, and Holmes. Tanner Banks has been having a pretty nice Cactus League as well. Altogether, 6 1/3 innings so far this spring. Only 5 hits, only 1 walk giving up, 1 run, and 8 strikeouts. He, of course, that lefty option, which Sox don't have many right now, waiting for Crochet, obviously, to come back sometime in May. White Sox offense, nothing much going on while Robbie Ray was on the mound for the Mariners. Man, he was locked in. He looked good. After Ray left, Sox right away put up a 3 spot. You had offense from all kinds of folks that are going to be there at 35th and Shields. Sox offense, 6 runs, 10 hits. Of those 10 hits, 6 were for extra bases. Seby Zavala had a double and a home run. I believe that was his 3rd home run of the spring. Hanser Alberto, my man, with his 4th double of the spring and an RBI. Oscar Colas with his 3rd home run of Cactus League play. Sox were 4 for 11 with runners in scoring position. Both Michael Kopech and Mike Clevinger were working on specific things in their respective outings this past weekend, and both received different results. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Baseball GM. Hey, I'm really excited about our new partner and sponsor of today's episode, the mobile game, Ultimate Baseball GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an MLB GM and managing your professional baseball franchise? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches and staff, scouting and drafting players, navigating your franchise through free agency and all the ups and downs of a season. And this is in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want. Now is your chance to prove that you can be more competent than Rick Hahn. No guarantee that you'll have as much job security as him, but it'll be fun to have that seat at the table over and over again. Hopefully you can set the market and be proactive instead of reactive. Locked On White Sox listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. Download the game. Just visit probaseballgm.com. Scan the code or look it up in the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. So Saturday saw the Chicago White Sox against the Dodgers. Was watching it again on the MLB TV app, and Michael Kopech was on the mound. We'll get to him in a moment. Sox lost to the Dodgers 6-4. So I got this passed along to me by Sydney Brown. If you're listening, thank you so much. Sent me a message on Twitter about Los Angeles Dodgers broadcasters talking about a possibility that maybe the Dodgers are going to try to trade for Tim Anderson. They are in need of some infield help after having some injuries, trying to kind of keep up with what the San Diego Padres have done. And, you know, with the situation with Tim Anderson, where I don't know. I just don't know if the White Sox are going to spend that kind of money eventually to keep Tim Anderson. So could the White Sox be entertaining offers? And it sounds like the Los Angeles Dodgers, this is the big rumor right now, that they would love to get their hands on Tim Anderson and get his services. So there are a lot of rumors going on in LA. And I saw this article, Dodgers Way on Fansided, written by Adam Weinrib. And this is what Weinrib had to say about this rumor, what people are talking about here. At the moment, with Gavin Lux out for the season, the Dodgers seem inclined to roll with utility man Miguel Rojas, logging most of the reps at short, as well as outfielder Chris Taylor in the wake. That's less than ideal given the expectations attached to the franchise and the star power in the Padres infield. This is what the rumored package could be heading Chicago's way for Tim Anderson. Michael Busch, Landon Knack, outfielder Jose Ramos, and pitcher Joel Abera. So take that for what you will. None of those names get me terribly excited at all. If the White Sox say to themselves, I just don't see us re-signing Tim Anderson to an extension, I don't know why you would do that right now and for those specific players. But again, hey, that's just something that was out there this past weekend coming out from L.A. Michael Kopech was on the hill on Saturday against the Dodgers. He left the game, came back in, goofy spring training rules, but all in all, he went 2 1/3 innings. He gave up 3 hits, 1 run, 0 earned runs, 2 walks, and 3 strikeouts. This is what Kopech said on his Saturday outing. I got to work on my curveball in the zone and also working on being quicker to the plate with the new rules and everything. We're going to have to figure out ways to control the running game a little bit. And I was probably a bit too quick on Saturday, which is probably a good problem to have, be able to slow down myself instead of having to speed myself up. There's still some things that my body's getting used to. My knee is learning to get back to being normal rather than trying to find the adjustment to work around. But yeah, I feel like I'm about at that point, and this is a normal spring buildup and a normal spring load, and it's not as much of a rehab spring for me. Not as much, he is saying. Obviously, it could have been a lot cleaner. I went deep in counts repeatedly, and I would like to be a little bit more efficient, clean up that first inning, and I probably could have had a complete third, maybe still have gotten through the fourth with the pitch count that I had. So I watched Kopech's his whole outing on Saturday. It was definitely not the type of outing that he had that was razor sharp last Sunday against the Angels, which was probably like their B team. LA had some starters that are going to, make the camp for sure. And it wasn't as smooth for Kopech, but I think that's good. I think it's good to have some of these, something to work on, something to make some adjustments. And remember, in that start he had against the Angels, he was talking about being gassed a little bit, trying to still handle the pitch clock. So I think that's another thing, obviously, he's working on. Mateo Diekman, Avila, Middleton, Alexi, Green, Kelly, and Stevers all through on Saturday after Kopech. Sox pitching had 12 strikeouts, gave up 8 walks, 10 hits, and 6 runs. White Sox offense, 4 runs, 11 hits, only 1 extra base hit, and that was Andrew Benintendi's first inning home run. It was his first of the spring, which was a great sign. Berger had 2 hits and an RBI. Sox were 1 for 5 with runners in scoring position. On Friday, that big St. Patrick's Day game with the Northsiders ended in a tie. Nancy Faust was there playing the organ, which was awesome to see. That game was on NBC Sports Chicago. White Sox with their green hats. They used to wear green uniforms way back when during spring training on St. Patrick's Day. Just went with the green hats. Cubs had the green hats as well. Clevinger on the mound, according to an article on WhiteSox.com, Clevinger working on sequencing and what pitches play in his second spring start. Clevinger went 3 2/3 of an inning, 3 hits, 3 earned runs, a walk, 3 strikeouts, gave up 2 home runs. Now, Mike Clevinger is one of those pitchers that the MLB commissioner's office flagged for, his windup would technically be a balk and not legal, so he would have to make some adjustments. I think that's something he's definitely working on. Again, he hasn't had a ton of work in a game in the spring, and I could just watching his motion, little herky-jerky. I mean, he's always been a little off on the mound, but he didn't look quite comfortable on Friday. I think he's trying to find his rhythm and what he's going to go with. He surrendered a pair of home runs. Yan Gomes hit a 2-run shot in the third, and Edwin Rios had a solo home run in the fourth. If you're looking for somebody to give you a very spring training answer, I thought his reasoning and his answer post-game was very spring training centric. This is what he had to say. We went with a couple of sequences we'd probably never do in the regular season. Like the last one to Jan, Clevinger said. I had him all day on the sliders. He was swinging and missing. We were trying to see how the changeup was going to play to righties because we saw early in spring it looked like it was going to be a big pitch for me, and I still think it is. But we were only using it to lefties. So we were like, hey, let's get in an advantage count and see how it plays to righties. And it didn't play too well, but we did get to see it. We got to see where it needs to go from here, at least. I thought that was everybody's wondering, like, what are pitchers working on? And sometimes they're so super specific. I thought Clevinger's answer was, wow, he was working on something very specific on Friday. He said he felt good and got up to 65 pitches. Next time around, the 80 marker and go full after that. You are 80 to 100 pitches, Clevinger said. Gregory Santos came into the game throwing 100 miles per hour. He pitched an inning and a third. We're going to get a little bit more about him in a moment here. He had 4 strikeouts in that game. Lopez, a clean inning with 2 strikeouts. Davis Martin, 3 innings, only 1 hit, gave up a home run, had 4 strikeouts. Sox pitching only issued 1 walk on Friday against the Cubs and had 13 strikeouts. Here's more on Santos. Remember, he came over to the Sox this past winter. What impressed me most, it's not the 100-mile-per-hour fastball. It's not the slider he throws for strikes for high percentage, which is a good combination, Grifol said of Santos. His will to be great, that's what has impressed me the most. On top of the 100-mile-per-hour fastball with plus movement, a slider he throws for strikes, his will to be great has been really impressive to me. He's a smart kid, a really smart kid, Grifol said, and versatility. He can pitch multiple innings, and he's got the stuff to pitch in any part of the game. Not that we would do that right now. He's a young kid. He's 23. That was a great pickup. High praise for manager Pedro Grifol. A name to definitely keep an eye out for. Sox offense, 4 runs, 8 hits, 4 extra base hits. Jimenez with a double in his first game back. No time off from him from the World Baseball Classic. Romy Gonzalez with his first home run of the spring. Sox were 2 for 11 with runners in scoring position. Lance Lynn did Team USA proud with his big outing this past weekend. And how long will Andrew Vaughn be out of action? More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The tournament is heating up, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets. If your first bet doesn't win, just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on anything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay, so don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. How about this World Baseball Classic? I mean, look, if you're the New York Mets, if you're a fan of that team, Houston Astros, you're not so happy right now. And there might be other injuries that I haven't heard about. And this World Baseball Classic is not over, but it sure has been exciting. I watched that game on Saturday with Big Lance Lynn on the mound against Venezuela. Lynn went 4 innings, gave up 4 hits, 2 earned runs, a walk, a couple strikeouts, did give up a home run. When he needed to strike out, man, he got it. When he needed an out, he got it. A lot of emotion, a lot of excitement. It's good to see a healthy, excited Lance Lynn taking care of business. Jose Ruiz was pitching for Venezuela. He did fairly well. An inning and 2/3, gave up only 1 hit, 1 walk, and 2 strikeouts. And Tim Anderson, he's cooled off as of late. 1 for 4 on Saturday against Venezuela, a couple strikeouts and a walk. And Eloy returned to the White Sox. He ripped that double I was talking about in his first game back. No days off for him. Pedro Grifol was talking about, maybe we'll give him a couple days off. He wanted none of that. Eloy Jimenez went 5 for 11 with 1 double and 2 RBIs over 3 games for the Dominican Republic. And he had some amazing things to say about the tournament. There's some great articles recently about, he was getting peppered with comparisons. Is it like the Sox Cubs series? Could you compare it to Game 3 against Houston on the South side, which was electric? And he put those completely in the rearview mirror. And he said, you know what, that Puerto Rico Dominican Republic game was bigger than anything I've ever been in. Obviously, he doesn't know what a World Series would be like. Nothing but great ththings about the atmosphere and the excitement. And that's what you're hearing from a lot of players. And if you're watching the games, it is insane. I'm hearing that fans can't even have conversations with each other that they're sitting next to because it's so loud, it's so intense. And someone made a point on social media that I thought it was really great. It was a good Twitter comment. Any worry that deep run players, which we're getting really late in the tournament here, will have experienced a slump when initial Major League Baseball games don't match the same level of overwhelming intensity. So I have thought about that. That is an interesting thing to think about. These guys are coming from such a high, especially, whoever ends up in the finals, and they have to then go down to, maybe a handful of games in Glendale, and then you're playing, late March, early April games that I believe mean a lot. They absolutely mean a lot, and they should be played with some urgency. But on the outside, it's like, I was just in like this biggest game of my life, and now I'm playing Detroit, in April or something, and it's 50 degrees, and I'm miserable. I don't know. That's a natural thing to think about. We've all been in those moments in our life where, it's such a big moment, such a big event, and then we go down to something that maybe might not mean as much. Does that affect your play? I don't know. I think that's where the manager comes into play. That's where Pedro Grifol and the coaching staff and try to get these guys ready, and set the tone and get them back together. Once he gets everybody back together at this World Baseball Classic, I think there's going to be some days of decompression. It's nice that they're not going to start the season right after, but yeah, that was an interesting point. You got to think about that and keep an eye on these last few games of the World Baseball Classic. In terms of injury report, Romy Gonzalez was dealing with some body soreness that forced him to miss some time last week. But he had a double on Sunday. Seems fine. Good to have him back in the lineup. He hit that home run on Friday, so his bat is slowly starting to come around. He's hitting above 100 finally. I think he's at like 157. And then Andrew Vaughn. Andrew Vaughn's the big one. This one seems a little bit significant. Andrew Vaughn will miss a few more days due to lower back soreness. He has not played since March 12th. Pedro Grifol said he's day to day, and we're going to err on the side of caution. He's played a ton. He's in a good spot. Vaughn, who has 31 at-bats over 12 games played, is listed as day-to-day. There's no reason to push him through anything right now, Grifol said. I'm sure if you asked him right now he could play, he'd say yeah. He's had a great camp. He feels comfortable at first base. We like where his swing is at. He likes where his swing is at, so we're good. On Sunday, Grifol said, I have no concerns with him at all. He took ground balls today. He feels good. But if you look at some of Vaughn's history, some sore leg stuff in 2021, that's when he was really experiencing the effects of a full season, and he was stuck in the outfield. You had a hand injury. He got hit with a pitch in May in 2022. He had a hip issue from diving for a ball out in the outfield, which he should have never been out in the outfield, basically a bruised pelvis. March, that was last season, 2022. And then towards the end of the season, August 22, he had lower back inflammation. And so the back has been something that we've known about, nagging him a little bit. Obviously, if that lower back's not right, the swing might not be right, and he could suffer. And playing through of it is something that I'm sure he's going to want to do. I hate to say I'm glad it's happening right now, but I'm glad it's happening right now instead of something in April that's lingering. Hopefully, it is nothing much. Hopefully, it's just been a long spring. But I don't like hearing about a back issue with Andrew Vaughn. So keep eyes on that for sure. Folks, thank you so very much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. We're on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and get your questions in for next week's mailbag, lockedonsox@gmail.com. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. Now for your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On the next episode, I'll continue to bring you the latest happenings from Glendale, Arizona, as the White Sox inch closer to opening day. Really appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.